So, you're a Cleveland Browns fan. Just how big of a fan are you? Do you deserve a seat at the Dawgs Table? Well, you're here, aren't you?
The best fans, the most patient fans in the league.
This is the Dawgs Table.
Touchdown, Shabalama Hub!
If you're obnoxious, opinionated, over the top, and you live for the Browns...
45-40, run, William, run! 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
Welcome to your new family, the Dawgs Table, an official Dawgs By Nature podcast on the SB Nation and Vox Media Podcast Network. Let's do this. Welcome to the Dawgs Table. Now your hosts, Craig Fountain and Ryan Angelo.
Let's go! Let's go! Go!
What's up, everybody? This is Craig Fountain and Ryan Angelo with the Dawgs Table, brought to you by Dawgs By Nature on the SB Nation and Vox Media Podcast Network. It is Victory Tuesday, Dogs fans, and yeah, what a game that was last night. Victory Tuesday, gotta love it.
It is not Victory Tuesday, Craig. I have to correct you there.
Wrong dogs that I'm rooting for.
Yes.
I wasn't rooting for them. I was just rooting against you. That's just what I do.
Yep, I got you.
But we are here to talk Cleveland Browns. We missed you guys last week. After the events of last Monday night's game, we decided not to do the show. Didn't feel like football was fun and happy, and there were more important things in that moment. So we decided to give it until this week. And but we're here now, and lots has happened. And I'm gonna kind of go back to right before this past week's game. Then we'll get into the game, and then we'll go into what's happened this week since the season ended. Ryan, what did you make of this Jadeveon Clowney situation heading into the Steelers game?
I'm not sure what to make of it, to be honest with you. I feel like it's just a culmination of everything that we've been dealing with this defensive staff and the way the defense has gone this year. I just feel like it's probably just boiling over, and he is just a little bit shorter fused than some of the other guys. And I think he has just had enough. And I think he's probably not the only person in the locker room that's had enough of that defensive staff and the way that things were happening. And, if what he says is true and they were practicing certain schemes and things of that nature all the way up until game day, and then Joe Woods comes into game day and decides that he's going to do things differently, I think that would be frustrating to me as well. I mean, you prepare all week for something and then you come to a game and they're like, oh, we're going to put you here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It came off a little childish. Was it the right place, right time? No, but I kind of respect the guy for stating his feelings. And, if it was that bad of an experience, you don't want to be here, then, see you later. And we'll catch you next time.
One of the reasons I bring that up, Ryan, is because one of the things that he alluded to was the idea that, he wasn't interested in coming back under the status quo. Now, his comments, regardless of whether he was right or wrong, they came with consequence, and that consequence was they sent him home. They said, go home. We don't need you. If anything changes, we'll give you a call. But one of the things that he alluded to was, hey, I'm not coming back here under the status quo, but rumor has it there could be some changes coming, and maybe they won't be back, and maybe I will. I don't know. Right. So now we get another off season of wondering if Clowney's coming back, and we'll find out in, I don't know, May or June or July or August.
After training camp, after everything, when he decides to do his thing.
So yeah, that was an interesting kind of series of events before the game, but it goes to show, I think, that the defense was just a wild west situation this past year. And, the accountability wasn't there. it got to the point where frustration started boiling over, and Clowney probably shouldn't have said the things he said. At the same time, it's hard to blame him with the frustration. Some of the things that he said, he was right on. Other things, maybe he was being a little selfish about it. But yeah, I mean, weird situation. Then we go on to Pittsburgh, and we have a chance to spoil their, potential postseason hopes, which we didn't get to do. And that was supposed to be our silver lining, right? Knowing that we're out of the playoff hunt. And it was just a bad game to me. It was not a great game. I was over it before it was over. Unlike the past, well, actually, much like the past, following the Steelers game, I don't think we use the same term anymore, but the Monday following the last game of the season,
Black Monday, I think is what it used to be called, right?
Yeah. I don't know what they call it now, but yeah, a bunch of firings happened, and Joe Woods is gone.
Yep.
It appears that Kevin Stefanski is safe. Kevin Stefanski mentioned in press conferences that more changes could come. And that means Mike Prefer may or may not be back. And then they started reaching out to other teams and requesting permission to interview candidates. Now, you can interview candidates from other teams provided you have permission. Most teams will not allow you to interview one of their coaches if it were to be for a position that would be a lateral move. For example, guys that everybody would love to see come to Cleveland, like D'Amico Ryans, for example, in San Francisco. Like, they have no incentive to allow him to come and interview for us for a lateral move, but they're essentially obligated to if they have a coach that would be getting a promotion. So you have Brian Flores, who is a linebackers coach in Pittsburgh. We're going to interview him. Jim Schwartz is a guy that the Browns have interest in. There's other coaches that they're rumored to have interest in. Gerard Mayo, all right, who is unproven, but could be a guy like D'Amico Ryans that comes in and has success. We don't know. Now, Ryan, and there's other names floating around out there, but Ryan, I know that you have very strong feelings about how they should approach this. And in your mind, it's one or two of these candidates.
Correct.
So far, or bust. So tell me about who you feel they should already have this list narrowed down to and why.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for the Browns, it's important to understand where we are as an organization, right? We have somewhat unproven head coach right now who needs help, obviously. The defensive coordinator is gone. And I just think that it's important for them to bring somebody in who's proven. And to me, 1A and 1B should be Jim Schwartz and Brian Flores. They could be interchangeable. I lean a little bit towards Flores just because I think he relates with players a little bit better, but that's me talking out of my butt a little bit. It's just things that I've heard, things that I've read over the years. I just know he's really highly respected among players. That being said, Jim Schwartz is an extremely good defensive coordinator. He has been. He's won a Super Bowl. He's had several teams within the top 10, has taken over several defensive teams that were terrible and immediately improved them. So either one of those guys to me should be the pick for the Browns. And I think the fact that they let go of Joe Woods as quickly as they did means that they're trying to get ahead of the curve, right? There's a lot of teams that are going to be looking for coaches. I think they're trying to get there and get into the forefront of the coaching search, get their guys in there as quick as possible and make their hire as quick as possible. If it's me and I'm running the Browns, it's Jim Schwartz or Brian Flores. I really don't care as a fan and as, a podcast guy. Like, I just don't care either one of those guys. I think either one would be a win for the organization. If you want somebody who's a little bit more proven, then probably Jim Schwartz, just because he's been there, he's done that, he's been at the highest level. He's a little bit older, and probably a little bit less likely to take off for another coaching gig than Brian Flores would be, because he's a little bit younger, and obviously he's been a head coach before and probably would like to be a head coach again. But I think those are the two. They have to be the favorites. I think the fact that the Browns are scheduled to interview Schwartz on Wednesday, Flores on Thursday of this week already, that shows you that they're pretty solid candidates for this team. And I think the Browns have their eye on, either or those guys.
So I'm not 100% Brian Flores as the guy. He's not somebody that I would be against hiring. I just think that a lot of folks feel like he's just an easy slam dunk, no brainer. I don't know if it's quite like that for me. And he's in Pittsburgh following a head coaching stint in Miami, and then he didn't find a job very easily after suing the NFL. There was a lot of accusations floating around, and that was kind of an ugly thing. And I don't think that lawsuit's been resolved at this point. I don't remember hearing about it being resolved. Either way, that's not gonna, I don't think that affects his chances here getting hired in Cleveland. One of the things that makes me nervous with Brian Flores is, and this is kind of a philosophy thing. Some people might think that this is a good thing. I don't think this is a good thing. And to me, I think Stefanski might end up looking over his shoulder a little bit if Flores is sitting there, because he would be your ideal interim head coach. He would be a candidate if this season is not successful, but his defense has success. He would be a candidate to take over as coach. This is definitely going to be like a position when Greg Williams took over for Hugh Jackson. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but there is a chance that it does. Jim Schwartz has also had a ton of success. He has the experience. He could do the same thing. I just think Brian Flores would be a little bit more likely in that scenario.
Right.
It's kind of like having a quarterback looking over their shoulder, and it affects their play.
Right. I think that kind of just, I think you're hitting on what Albert Breer was talking about this week when he said that Brian Flores might be the clubhouse leader, or the clubhouse, that's who the players want, essentially. He's younger. He relates with the players. He's got some fire behind him. And I think that's kind of probably the worry of the organization as well. What does this signal to Kevin Stefanski if we do bring him in here? You might be a little bit safer doing it with Jim Schwartz just because of his age, the age difference. He's been there. He's 56. He's not as likely to, run off for another job. He's not as likely to, scheme behind your back for your job kind of thing, so I still say either one for me.
Here's the other part of it though. Like, that can't be the end all be all or the majority factor in your decision making, because are we planning to fail?
Right.
We're not planning to fail, right? If they're keeping Stefanski, I doubt you think they'd rip the Band-Aid off if they thought the guy didn't have it, right?
Right. I still think that they want to see him with the full season with Watson. I think that's essentially what this whole thing is. I think if they didn't have Deshaun Watson, I think he probably would have been gone this year.
I agree with you. I think that played a role in it for sure. I am undecided on Stefanski. I think I would be okay. I'm okay with him sticking around. I would also be okay if they were able to get an upgrade there. But man, so many unknowns. And we only really have one missing piece at this point. So, and one of the things that came out that was a little concerning, and I forget exactly how it was phrased, but reports were coming out that just because they're bringing somebody else in at DC doesn't mean that the rest of the defensive staff is going to be controlled by the DC. And that is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. Maybe did I take that wrong when I read those reports?
No, and I'm hoping they're wrong. I think I've seen it both ways. I know somebody has said that, the person's going to have whoever comes in as D coordinator is going to have their ability to bring in, or pick and choose coaches that they want to keep. But I just think that when you bring somebody in like that to run a defense, you cannot, handcuff this guy with leftovers from the previous staff. It just doesn't make sense. It's a recipe for disaster, like you said, and it's just typical Browns if that does happen. That's just like the organization just trying to be too smart, to just kind of just shooting himself in the foot, getting their own way. You have to let that guy have the ability to bring in who he wants, who he feels comfortable working with, who he thinks is going to be successful. The system, you could have coaches on that current defensive or defensive staff that aren't used to working a specific system that he might like. It's just there's so much that goes into that. You have to have that chemistry as a coaching staff just as much as you do as a football team, and that plays into your chemistry as a football team. So we've already seen how it affects the defense, where they either have a coach or a defensive staff that they don't respect or want to play for, or don't think that knows what the hell they're doing. So you can't just bring a guy in and be like, okay, well, we're going to hire you, but you're going to keep all these guys that our players hate already and try to make it work. Like, you just can't do that to somebody.
Yeah, and another thing that I saw from fans, a lot of fans were wondering why some of the players were voicing support for Joe Woods. So that's something I kind of want to touch on. And these players, realistically, the majority of these players aren't always going to play for the Browns, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of turnover in the NFL. They may have to play for this guy again.
Right.
They're not going to burn that bridge. So, they're saying the right things, whether they buy in or not. Surely not everybody hates the guy. Surely
Right.
he has his guys. It kind of seemed like Myles Garrett was kind of backing Joe, but like if you watched it and listened to what
Yeah.
he was saying, it didn't feel authentic.
Right.
Obviously Clowney wasn't a fan, but
Right.
I'm sure some of these guys on the team did like him.
I mean, let's be honest. There's such thing as coach speak and there's such thing as player speak, right? Some of these players are professional enough that they know that they're not going to badmouth their employer in the media. They've been trained well enough. They know that someday down the line, that guy could be their boss somewhere else, or it could be their coach somewhere else. And they're not going to throw him under the bus because it makes them look bad as a player. It makes them look selfish. Some guys care about their image, and there's other guys that are vets in the league that might just say it how it is, and they don't care so much about what you think of them. And they know that they're placed up on the field, and that's all that should matter. But there is such thing as player speak, and that's what you get from some players, and then you don't from others. But I wouldn't expect every player on that defense to hate him. I wouldn't expect every player on that defense to love him. And I sure as hell wouldn't expect anybody to go, into the media and completely throw him under the bus. They can voice frustration, but most players are smart enough and mature enough that they're not going to be complete, asses in the media.
Yeah. And then another thing that we had Andrew Berry downplaying the perception of analytics. Did you listen to his bit? The whole analytics are just another, it's just another department. It's no more, no less than our scouting department or our consulting departments, or,
Right.
it's just a piece to the puzzle. He specifically referenced the article that came out that essentially said that Stefanski was being forced to run his offense a certain way based on analytics, presumably against his will. I don't know if
Right.
I'm paraphrasing that too strongly, but that's what I got out of it. So there's a lot of questions moving forward, and there needs to be a meeting of the minds, and they really need to figure out what they're doing here and commit.
I can tell you something from the press conference that really struck me and made me extremely concerned about this team moving forward. And this is we didn't talk about this before the show, but Andrew Berry, when asked about Jedrick Wills' progress this year, again, there is coach speak, right? There's organization speak. They are not going to throw a player under the bus, but I thought it was extremely concerning that his use of the words he's made strides this year,
but he's inconsistent.
So let me just sum this up for everybody. Jedrick Wills did not make strides this year. If anything, Jedrick Wills went backwards this year. So for him to say that he made strides, like, I don't know if he was just trying to think of something to say in the moment or if he really truly believes that. And that's what's concerning to me, because Jedrick Wills is not the left tackle that this team needs. I've seen enough from him to know that his work ethic obviously is not good enough. He's too lazy, and you cannot have your left tackle play like that. So I just thought that was extremely concerning that was what he said when asked about Jedrick Wills. Although I do understand that he's not going to throw the kid under the bus. He is somebody that was drafted, by Andrew Berry. But to say that he made strides was just very, very odd for me. I know that made its rounds on Twitter and stuff after the fact, but Andrew Berry, let me tell you, if you're listening to my show right now or our show, please don't ever use that again when you talk about Jedrick.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to make the film bros mad if they hear this, but whatever.
Right.
Right. Yeah. All right. Flores seems to be the leading candidate as far as the media is concerned.
Right.
As far as fans are concerned, talking with fans on social media and with coworkers and things like that, everybody seems to like the idea of Brian Flores. What do you think about the fact that he's never been a defensive coordinator? Does the fact that he's been a head coach in this league make up for that?
Probably a little bit. I know he's got a lot of defensive experience. Like, he's coached linebackers and safeties, which is a plus for me because, those are two positions that we really have been struggling at. But the title of D coordinator, no, it doesn't necessarily concern me. And I call him proven as a coach just because he has been a head coach and he's been around for a long time. And I would rather have somebody like him than someone who's a defensive assistant and just finally getting into a D coordinator role, if that makes sense. Like, I just don't want any more training grounds in Cleveland, if that makes sense. I don't want Berea to be the place where coaches come to get their feet wet and then go on. Like, we need to field a winning football team.
That's what Houston's for.
Right. Like, I could understand if we were like, the Patriots or a winning football team year after year where you could afford to do that with coaches. But for someone who's your defensive coordinator, you don't win enough here to bring somebody in and see if he has the chops to do it. Like, they just need somebody that the players respect, that will demand excellence, that will demand effort and, intensity, and somebody that the players are going to want to play for. And, you just sometimes don't get that with first-time coaches.
So a little bit on Brian Flores' history. He's been around the NFL since he was only 23 years old. He started out as a scouting assistant. And he was with the New England Patriots from 2004 all the way until 2018. He started out as a scouting assistant, became a scout, then became a special teams assistant. And then he was an assistant offense and special teams coach, then a defensive assistant, then a safeties coach, then a linebackers coach. And then he was hired by the Miami Dolphins to be their head coach in 2019. He spent 3 years in Miami. And last year in Pittsburgh, he spent time with the Steelers as their linebackers and senior defensive assistant coach. So, he's got a lot of experience and he's still a young guy and he spent most of his time on defense. This is a really stupid question. I already know it, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you think he would consider a special teams coordinator position, or do you think that if we don't snatch him up, somebody's going to hire him as a defensive coordinator regardless?
Somebody's going to hire him as a defensive coordinator.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, no question.
Looking at how he spent times with special teams, getting back into a coordinator role, I guess, there's going to be enough demand. He won't have to worry about that, but silly question.
Let him play with it if he wants to, let him,
right?
Touch defense or special teams a little bit if he wants to help out. I don't care.
Yeah. But I think he seems to be the fan favorite. The media is clearly pushing that too. Now, what do you think about guys that have been linked to the Browns job? Dawgs By Nature, had Jim Leonard linked before anybody else even had him on their radar. Former Browns player, What do you think about a guy like him? Or are you still just on the nope, don't want him if he doesn't have NFL experience train?
So Jim was somebody that I had actually brought up to you one time. I think it was after one of our shows. We were talking off the air, and he was somebody I said to look out for because he's pretty respected in the defensive community. But I just, the more I've sat on it and the way that the season unfolded, and just seeing the dissension within the defensive side of the locker room, I just feel like they need somebody proven. They need somebody that's going to come in and demand it. Somebody that's going to get that respect as soon as they walk in the door. And somebody who knows what they're talking about, somebody that the players are going to play hard for no matter what. So, I mean, that's just where I lean. I just get tired of, like I said, just being that training ground for coaches. It's just, you can afford that when you're a winning football team, but when you're a perennial losing football team, you can't afford to do that. But sometimes that's your only option. So I understand. So
we have a commenter saying Phil Dawson should be considered for special teams coordinator. I think that there's still a good chance that this position opens up. I don't know who would be, who they would have their sight set on. That's a little bit of a different area. They can bring guys in from any direction to handle that. Guys we've never heard of could come in and be successful.
Correct.
My vote, I like the Phil Dawson idea, but my vote's for Pat McAfee. Can we pay him enough to get him away from
that guy makes
the Pat
too much
McAfee
money.
show? But that would
I'd
be
love
something,
it,
wouldn't it?
Well,
right?
It would be. That dude's so fun.
Oh man, I love that guy. But that would be interesting. So we're gonna have a long off season to discuss all these things. We're already looking towards the draft. I've been putting out content for Dawgs By Nature, looking at potential draft prospects the Browns could be keeping an eye on throughout the college season, looking at a lot of games, mostly the bigger games in the NCAA. So, we've already started looking at that at Dawgs By Nature. Everybody else is going to start looking at it, and we're going to have lots of discussion around that. We're going to have free agency coming up. That's going to be what's going to come first. And then of course the draft, and then, some more free agency, but it's going to kind of get, it's going to get a little slow. So I'm not sure, what we're going to be focusing our content on over the course of, February. Presumably it's going to be draft, in direction there and things like that. But, hopefully the Browns aren't dominating headlines in the wrong way in February.
Correct.
That would give us lots to talk about, but
right.
I think in a way we're tired of that, right?
100%.
So,
I mean, let's be honest. Andrew Berry is going to have to earn his money this offseason, right? I mean, they're bringing in a new coordinator. They're probably going to have some other staff changes. They've got to do a lot of contract restructuring to come up with cap space. They've got the draft, which, presents some hurdles for them because they don't have a first round pick this year. And they have holes. And we've had a comment earlier in the show on the side here that's, D tackle, linebacker, another wide receiver, safety. Like these guys, we can have guys that are, I mean, like you could have guys on the team right now that we're talking about that might not be there next year. They could be traded. They could be released. They could be let go. There's going to be holes to fill, and he's really going to have to earn his money and come up with some cap space and things of that nature. I fully expect to see some contracts being restructured, before free agency hits and such. So it's going to be busy offseason for the Browns. And, like I said, Andrew Berry is going to really, really have to earn his money this year. With
rollover from this past year's cap, I think without restructuring any contracts, they're sitting between $1.5 and $2 million.
Correct.
That's not going to get it done. And they need at least roughly 8 to sign their draft picks from this upcoming draft. And that's without paying a first round pick.
Right.
And then if they're going to be active in free agency, then, to fill some of these holes, they're going to have to be. And I know that that's not the strategy, right? The strategy felt like build through the draft. But now that, we gave up so much of our early draft capital over the next few years, they're putting all their money on Deshaun Watson / hitting mid-round picks. And the further we get into Andrew Berry's tenure, the more we're questioning his mid-round draft selections. And there's a lot of names floating around. I see some in the comments right now. DeAndre Hopkins is a hot name. Everybody would love to see DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not a fan. For the value of it. Good player, great player, one of the best to ever do it. Still got gas in the tank, but for the money he's going to want, he's a 31-year-old guy that has had injury issues and, I don't know. Michael Thomas, dude can't find the field any more than Will Fuller can. Yeah. What are some of the other names that have been thrown around for wide receiver? It's escaping me off the top of my head, but DeAndre Hopkins is the big one. Reports came out that Arizona, they want to try to trade him. They fired their head coach. They're Brandon Cooks. I don't know. These are easy links to make because of the Deshaun Watson and the Texans connection. But Brandon Cooks, we've talked about this before.
Right.
Why can't this dude stay on a team for more than 1 year? What is he doing? He's been with the dude gets Houston traded every single year.
He's been with Houston for a while, but let me put it this way. I would love to have DeAndre Hopkins on this team, but he's an outside receiver, and technically the Browns have that kind of taken care of with Cooper and DPJ. They need somebody who could stretch the field, somebody who could play inside, play a little Z. So I would say if you were looking at the three that we just talked about, Hopkins, Thomas, Cooks. Thomas is out of the question. I don't think they would touch him with a 10-foot pole. But between Hopkins and Cooks, the most likely of the two would probably be Cooks because he fits the needs of the team better. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think if they could figure out a way to get Hopkins in there, they would probably do it. But I just think for compensation needed and his cap hit and the amount of money that he already makes, I just don't think he would fit. It would be too much money wrapped up in that position, and it's not a position of need. Alan Lazard was another name that I saw thrown around. It's in a comment here on the side, and also I've seen it on Twitter. I even said to somebody that had sent me a message on Twitter recently that I would be intrigued by him. He plays a little bit inside at the Z position, but he's also an outside receiver. So they need somebody that fits that spot that can stretch the field from the inside, from the slot position. And, I think Cooks would probably fit that mold the best and probably could get him the cheapest. But is it likely? Probably more likely than Hopkins, but I would still say that they probably won't get him.
Yeah. And some of it's going to be, what they have to give up to get some of these guys. And for some of these guys, you're not going to pull a deal like they did with Amari Cooper for DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think.
No, I would be shocked.
I don't think they're going to shop him for a fifth. No. Some of that, is with what you would have to package to get some of these guys, trade up in the draft, get into the middle of the first round.
Right. This is a position that they've put themselves in. I hate to say
it, but because I'm not a fan of the guy, I think that he had one good year in college, and you guys are going to hate me for saying this. I don't really want him on my team, but to me, Smith and Jigba makes more sense than some of these guys. And you probably could wait until he falls into the second round or to the end of the first and go get him.
Right.
He's been very successful when he has been in between Olave and Wilson. So, that's something. But
like I said,
let me throw a name at you. Since we're on this, sorry, hold that thought. Mecole Hardman. No. I think that he would be an outstanding value for this team. He's not going to be vet minimum. He's going to make a little bit of money, but the special teams aspect.
He's got injury concerns too, though.
All right. Not a fan of Mecole Hardman.
He's a field stretcher. He's quick. He's fast. He would fit the position. Am I going to be complaining if they go out and get him? No. Am I his biggest fan? No. But the Browns need somebody. This is the position that they put themselves in, right? It doesn't look like David Bell is going to be that guy. It doesn't look like Schwartz is going to be that guy. They've put themselves in this position that they have to bring somebody in. They're going to have to spend money. They're going to have to come up with money. they're going to have to do something in free agency. They can't expect to draft 8 people this year and them all be starters for them and fill immediate needs. It's not going to work. They're going to have to be active in free agency this year. So, this is the bed that they've dug for themselves, and here we go.
Yeah, and I don't know that the answer is going to be to have 2, like true, number ones. They're going to view Amari Cooper as a true number 1, and they're going to put, it would be like the Landry Beckham experience all over again,
Right.
in my opinion. You got to be careful here.
You just have to have somebody that complements your offense and fits with the other receivers. That's all it is. It's really not that hard, Browns.
No, and there's guys that I have my the Njigba. We're gonna have Njigba arguments in the comments. I did a whole write-up on Njigba. I wrote a big long piece for DBN. And digging in further, he's not a guy that I would have very high on my draft board. I can see why some teams have him far lower than he'll ever fall, but not a slam dunk to me. But where was I going with this? I was about to turn the page into something else, and I forgot. We are going to welcome into the show Barry. And how you doing, Barry?
I'm here, baby. I'm here.
All right. So Barry was on our last episode. He is a regular guest on the show. I don't know how much of the show you've gotten to catch so far, Barry, but
just jumped in home from soccer, and I jumped in with you talking about the Jigma and having one good year, and I'm like, oh, I got to get in on this.
All right, lay it on me.
He didn't have a good year. He had one good bowl game. And he sat out this year with various injuries, had a chance to help the team get into the national championship game. He sat out. How big would he have been there when Harrison went down?
I'll meet you halfway. He had a great bowl game, but he also had he also had 5 or 6 games
against who he was play?
Huh?
Not against ranked teams, not against top teams. He played against the fluff teams this year. He didn't do anything last year because he sat behind Wilson and Olave. He was a third option. You had Wilson and Olave on the field.
That was his best year.
Last year?
Mm-hmm. When he was with Olave and Wilson, yeah.
Well, he had Olave and Wilson on the field, so he wasn't exactly drawing a number 1 defender against him either. You know what I mean? You had 2 guys who went to the NFL and put up 1,000 yards seasons in their first season in the NFL. They're legit wide receivers. The Jig was, to me, especially when he set out the college bowl or the playoff game this year, you really had a chance to help your team get into a national championship game, and you took the easy way out. Now, I don't blame him because he's looking at a payday.
I mean, to some extent, you can't blame these guys for sitting out of bowl games. I don't know what I would do in that scenario, but
I'll just interject. I think you guys are both crazy. I'd take him in a heartbeat. But if you ask Olave and Wilson, who's the better route runner out of the 3, they're both going to tell you it's Jackson. So he's this year was a weird year. Obviously, he had the hamstring issue that kept him out the whole year. There was some talk of whether or not he was going to be at the bowl game or even be eligible at the bowl game. There was some talk that when they lost to Michigan, he disenrolled from classes because he wanted to start getting prepared for the draft. So he may have not even been eligible to play in the playoff. He had a lingering hamstring issue, and apparently it was pretty severe. And he tried to come back several times this year, and he couldn't do it. He wasn't as equipped to help the team in the way that he wanted to. So he sat himself, and that's what the team and him agreed on. So I understand that part of it. I understand the injuries that happens. But he's an extremely good football player. And I think this year has soured some people on him, which rightfully so. I get it. But I think if you wouldn't want him on your team, you're crazy for thinking that, because I think he would be an insanely good slot guy in the NFL. Because he's one of those guys that is like a top tier echelon elite route runner. And it's not really much debate on that.
You can find somebody better than Schwartz
For sure.
In the middle of the draft. I don't think you have to go early at wide receiver.
No,
but I wouldn't be opposed to them trying to move up in the draft. Our mid-round wide receiver picks aren't panning out. Jury's still out for David Bell. I'm still interested to see what David Bell can develop into. I know where I was going before when I lost direction. Wide receiver wise, there's a guy that I would really like to see. You didn't get to see Smith and Jigba in the national championship game, but you did get to see Kenny McIntosh. And Kenny McIntosh of Georgia would be the ideal mid-round draft pick for the Cleveland Browns, and I will be selling you guys on this guy all offseason. He is
he's a running back.
He is a running back. He is in a split backfield, and he's ultra productive, has an outstanding running style, but he is Georgia's third leading wide receiver. And I believe their leading touchdown pass catcher on the team. This guy runs routes as good as any wide receiver. And he, this guy can run the ball like Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt. He can, he's a little more like Kareem Hunt, but he can bruise if he needs to, but he can also burn people on a wheel route, and he has phenomenal hands. Aside from that one embarrassing trip over his feet moment, Daniel Jones style, against Ohio State, he's so good. He's so good. In the comments, people are saying they want a defensive tackle. Keep an eye on Tyler. Is it Tyler Perry in Clemson? I think it's Clemson. I'm going to be giving you guys all sorts of prospects throughout this offseason that I think are going to be interesting. But free agency will kind of clear up some of the intentions going into the draft. They may have to draft for need. That's goes against everything that they've been trying to achieve, right? This is a front office that appears to want to get away from drafting for need. They want to take the best player available. I don't know that we're going to get.
The thing about drafting for need is that means you typically don't have depth, and that's the thing that sucks. I'd rather see them go out and spend money that they don't have on somebody and draft for depth, versus not sign anybody in free agency and then draft and not have anybody behind that person. So it's tough. They're in a bad position. I mean, they really are. It's going to be interesting to see how he navigates it.
They don't have any room to miss on their second.
No, they don't. And that's the position they put themselves in. And honestly, I mean, that's the position Barry's put himself in when he should have addressed the defensive tackle position this year.
Speaking of defensive tackles, let me ask you this, Ryan.
Yeah.
Is this the time to switch to a 3-4 so that we only have one guy that sucks in the middle?
I don't know, man. I wish I had the answer. I really do. I wish.
I mean, do we need our linebackers are, I like JOK. Anthony Walker is going to be a big piece, assuming he can come back healthy and good and strong. Taki made strides this year. I don't know who else is going to be back, but I feel like we hit on linebackers more than.
How do you feel plays in a 3-4?
What's that?
How do you feel Garrett plays in a 3-4? Some guys. I don't know.
think it'll matter for Garrett. I think that he can probably do literally whatever you ask him to.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. You sprung that one on me. I'd have to do some research on that one.
And surely that's something that they're going to be discussing in these defensive coordinator interviews. It's a big part of the interview.
Right. If I'm not mistaken, I think Jim Schwartz is a 4-3 guy.
Brian Flores has never been a defensive coordinator, so we don't know exactly what he would be dreaming up.
Who do you guys want as a defensive coordinator? Did I miss that part?
Ryan wants Flores. I'm undecided. I'm not sure.
I'm Flores or Schwartz. Don't get me wrong. I think my preference leans a little bit towards Flores, but I'm 1A, 1B on both of those. I'd be stoked for either one.
Yeah. You guys already touched on it. We won't waste time on it.
Yeah, but All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna close out the show. Tune in next Tuesday. It's gonna, this is kind of our off-season kickoff episode. We kind of went all over the place, putting the season behind us. We didn't even recap the Steelers game because I just don't even want to talk about it.
Nope.
So
They finished
tune in. What's that?
How did they finish 9-8? How did they have their worst team in decades and still have a win? We put our most talented team on the field in decades.
Good coaching.
I don't want to talk about it.
Coaching makes a difference.
You're right.
So that is it for this episode. Join us next week. Tune in on the Dawgs By Nature podcast network via SB Nation and Vox Media, and
Tune in for the after show.
Yes, stick around for the after show if you're watching live. We go live Tuesdays at 9 on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter on our social media networks, at Dawgs Table on Twitter and Facebook, and at The Dawgs Table on YouTube. So tune in. You can follow me on Twitter at Craig A. Fountain, and you can follow Ryan on Twitter at Ryan Angelo CLE, at Ryan Angelo CLE. Want to make sure I got that out there all correctly. I had to repeat myself there, but tune in next week. We'll see you next time. If you're watching, stick around for a second and join the overtime show. See you next week. Go Browns.
Go Browns.
He's a special person. And,
all right. So
that was your pod.
What's that?
That was the audio version.
Yeah. So I'm going to put the link in the comments if anybody wants to come on the show. I don't know if Joe's still watching. We haven't seen Joe in a while. He's not liking that Njigba slander. I will say Njigba stats wise, like he was a stat monster in 2021, which is pretty incredible considering he shared the field with Olave and Wilson, and they were both very productive, and they were both top 12 draft picks. But BJ does have a point. He's going to draw their third or fourth best defender. They're occupied with Olave and Wilson. There's other things to consider there.
But see, he's not an outside guy, though. He's not going to be your number one. He's an inside small body receiver.
Right.
So you don't need him to be that guy.
He has average size, average speed.
They needed him to be that guy this year.
Right.
They needed him. They needed him to be the inside.
Well, lucky for them, they've got a Hall of Famer's son on the team. That
he wasn't inside. He wasn't an outside guy. He wasn't anything this year.
Right.
Joe is here to defend Njigba's honor.
Yeah, look at that beard.
Yeah, so, dude, I mean, Njigba that year, I understand where you're coming from with, having Olave and Garrett Wilson, but the dude can ball. He's got speed. He's got talent. And, I don't know if it was Ryan or if it was Craig who had said that, if they asked who was the best route runner, it was, in fact, Smith and Njigba. It was very disheartening as an OSU fan this year to not have him out on the field. But you know what? I mean, we're in a different age now, I think, in college football, where these guys, they've displayed their talent and they want to get paid. And I'm all for that, especially, after seeing a lot of the things that, injuries and all these things that these guys go through that, they're trying to get their money. And I totally am for that.
It's the Willis McGahee scenario, right? In the national championship game against Ohio State, he got his knee blown out like that.
Right. There's intangibles. He lost the intangibles with me. That's for one, 1,600 yards. Stats means nothing in college football. Stetson Bennett just won his second national championship at the age of 25 and his second national championship MVP. He's 25. I mean, stats mean nothing. Were
you a Baker bro?
What's that?
Were you a Baker bro?
No. I was a Baker fan, and then I grew tired of Baker. And I feel like he got a raw deal. I really do. I mean, I feel like he had some talent, and he comes to the Browns, and we ruined another quarterback, and then he's on his third team, and how many different offensive coordinators, how many different coaches. The guy can't get any stability. He never had a chance. You never had a chance to really see what
I think he had a chance. I think that he was his own worst enemy.
I some extent too. So I'm indifferent on Baker. I'm not passionate one way or another about it. I really am not.
Okay.
But like,
okay, we are not allowed to talk about Baker Mayfield anymore on the show. God damn it.
but
Sorry,
like,
it's been a while for me, so I just wanted to, I had to get my little 2 cents in real quick.
college football stats are overrated. You get the Buckeyes. You get a team like the Buckeyes. You get a team like Alabama. You get a team like Georgia. You'll play how many games will they play? 12. I don't know if
Yeah, probably
Georgia
depending if you go to a bowl or
none of them
conference championship
are typically blowouts because they're fluff games. You play 3 games a year, so you got 9 games of racking up stats.
Yeah, it's debatable. I don't know.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but that's a product of their talent though as well.
I mean, I don't know. I think this was his season to show that he was. There's. I don't know. I don't know how you sit out. I mean, I know how you sit out the Citrus Bowl or the Magnavox Bowl or whatever, Bud Light Bowl. I understand how you sit that out, but I don't know how you sit out the college playoffs. I think that's
and to be they are maintaining that it was because of injury. I don't believe it. I don't know if anybody believes it, but that is still their official answer, and they're sticking to it.
Yeah, so I'm of the belief that there was a little bit more to his eligibility than they wanted to talk about. The rumor is that once they lost to Michigan, he kind of disenrolled from school, had left the team, and went on to start to prepare and rehab for the draft, right? Didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. Well, then when they got into the playoffs, rumor has it was that they tried to see if he could be eligible again to keep him, to be able to play. And sounds like that was an issue that wasn't going to be,
I mean, he did ball out in the Rose Bowl last year. That's it was a big game. He played. He had a great game, in a big, the Rose Bowl's
right.
It's not it's not a crap bowl. And,
right.
And,
let me clarify. That is reckless speculation on my part.
Okay.
I know no background.
You said
on that,
it as if it was truth, and you expect us to believe you.
I said I'm of the opinion, and I do. If there's anything that I cover as closely or more than the Browns, it's Ohio State football. I'm very involved in the recruiting. I research all that stuff. So I pretty much know a lot about the Buckeyes and what's going on in the program. Like I have some people that I talk to that are very connected in the program and things of that nature. I'm not an insider by any means, but I just think that there was a little bit more to that than the injury issue as well.
I mean, I can from his point of view, that injury was pretty significant. And I think he tried coming back a little too early.
Right.
And at that point, when he did come back and re-injured it, I think, what was it, the second or third play that he played in, I think at that point, reality starts setting in your head, especially after the season he had, previously. And I think that it's pretty easy to kind of disconnect yourself from, the college play at that level and, move yourself on to that pro level.
Right. I mean, it's risk versus reward. I mean, you've got, now they've got, agents and team members that are helping them with things with NIL and all that stuff in the picture now. They've got family talking to them, pulling them one way. Then they got the coaching staff advising them another way. And, college football is a big business. So the coaching staff, if you are that caliber of player and you're looking at going at that level of the draft or that early in the draft, they're going to tell you it's probably best for you not to injure yourself any further.
Right.
Like they want to win. Trust me, they want to win. They would love to win a national championship, but most of those big time programs, if they have integrity, they're telling the kid, listen, I know you want to play, but you're not 100%. And I don't want to see you lose out on tens of millions of dollars because you blow your knee out. So it's a business side
and
of it.
I think Ryan Day is that type of coach too.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely that type of, he's more of a player's coach, and,
Right.
he wants to do what's best for his program, but I think he also takes to heart, these kids too.
Right.
There's a life after college
Right.
football for them. As much as there's, Ryan Day and his staff, I mean, that's all, they're going to eat, sleep, and breathe.
Right.
But at that same mentality, it's like, okay, we're Ohio State. We recruit the way we do, next man up.
Well, I mean, you just saw it in the game against Georgia. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. did not have a concussion. He even said, I was okay. I could have went back in the game, but I respected the coaching staff and the medical team's decision to keep me out of the game because it was a hard hit, and he did kind of get loopy there after the hit. So he said he was fine. He wanted to come back in the game. He tried to, but Ryan Day wouldn't let him. The medical staff wouldn't let him because they weren't willing to take a chance with his health. Right. So, I mean, and that's the number one team. You're going up against the number one team in the country. It's in a really close game, and you're about to go to a national championship possibly. Like, how many coaches would make that decision on their best player on the field?
Not the coach from Varsity Blues, I'll tell you that.
Not many, I'll tell you.
Bud Kilmer.
Bud Gilmer, yep.
That statue's still standing.
Right.
All right, fellas, I'm going to take off. I just had to defend that a little bit. I respect all you guys and love talking to you guys. I'm going to try to join a little bit more here now in the off season. But I wish you guys all good luck, and go Browns.
Thanks,
all right. Thanks, Joe.
Yep. See you.
Have a good one, man.
I got a bit later, homies.
See you, Barry.
Later, bud.
All right. So I think that's going to be it for today's show. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Join us next Tuesday at 9 p.m. We'll be going live. And make sure that if you listen to podcasts, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That would be a huge help. Make sure you're following us on our social media channels. Stay tuned for merch. Ryan's trying to figure out how to get one of these big hats that these guys are wearing with our logo on it. Thanks for joining, guys. We'll be around all off season, bringing you all the free agency stuff, the draft stuff, the coaching stuff, everything. We appreciate all of you for tuning in. It's been a hell of a year. We thank all of you, and we hope you guys continue to join us and listen in and all that. We love you. We thank you. Until next time, go Browns.
Go Browns, guys.